Welcome back to So You Really Want to Learn Latin, and today we are going to be carrying on looking at indirect statements, and we are going to introduce the passive. Okay, now I did warn you that there were a few more infinitives to learn. The good news is you already know the present infinitive passive. Okay, it may seem a long time ago, but you already know amari, moneri, regi, audiri, and capi. Okay, those are the present infinitives passive of the main conjugations. Okay, and we're going to learn today how to do an indirect statement where the statement is in the passive. Okay, so for example, we're going to be able to say something like, he says that the town is being attacked, or he says the town has been attacked, or even he says the town will be attacked. Okay, so the basic concept there is that the infinitive needed in our accusative and infinitive construction, the infinitive needs to be passive. Okay, right, so I will just run through these passive infinitives first, and then we'll see how they work. So, present infinitive passive, we've already done. Amari, moneri, regi, that's the funny one which squishes. Audiri, capi, that one squashes. Okay, those are the present infinitive passive, and those are the present infinitives passive, and they mean to be loved, to be warned, to be ruled, to be heard, to be captured. Okay. Now, the future infinitive passive doesn't really exist, and there's a wonderful little explanation of this fact on page 36 of the book, So You Really Want to Learn Latin, book 3. If you want to kind of read the detail of quite why it is the case that there isn't a future infinitive passive, do read it, it's great fun. But what I'm going to teach you is the thing that we use, and that is simply, for ammo, amatum iri. Okay, it is the supine, okay, fourth principal part of the verb, with the word iri, eerie. Okay, I'm not even going to tell you what that form is because it'll spoil the fun of reading about it in the book. But suffice to say, if you go to the supine of the verb and add iri, iri, you get the form that means to be about to be loved. Okay, that's a future infinitive passive, to be about to be loved. And for moneo, it's monitum iri, to be about to be warned. And for rego, it's rectum iri. And for audio, auditum iri. And for capio, captum iri. Okay, so, you know, they're kind of recognizable because they look a bit peculiar. They don't decline in any way. You don't need to change them, make them agree with anything. They are just what they are. And as you would expect, not massively common. But we've got to be complete in all of this. So that is how you create a future infinitive passive to be used in our accusative and infinitive construction. Okay? And finally, the perfect infinitive passive is laughably easy because, again, you go to the supine. This time you do change it. You change to us, so you get amatus. And then you just add esse, okay, the present infinitive of sum. Add that onto amatus, and you get to have been loved. Amatus esse, to have been loved. And obviously for moneo, it's monitus esse, and rego rectus esse, audio auditus esse, and capio captus esse. Okay, so those are the infinitives. You now know all 6, and I'm going to refer to that future infinitive passive as if it is a future infinitive passive. despite what we learn about it's not really being one. It's going to be one for the purposes of this exercise. Okay, so we can now do the present infinitive active and passive. We can do the future infinitive active and passive. And we can do the perfect infinitive active and passive. And as a result, we can now create these indirect statements referring to the present, the future, or the past in both the active and the passive. Well, what's not to like? Okay, right, little bit of practice then at these new passive ones. So for example, let's see what we've got here. If you want to say, he says that the enemy are being defeated. Okay, he says that the enemy are being defeated. Okay, he says, dicit, that the enemy, remember we go into our accusative, hostes, that word is accusative plural. So dicit, hostes, are being defeated superari. Okay, so that is the present infinitive passive of supero. So dicit hostes superari, he says that the enemy are being overcome or defeated. Okay? Now, if what he's actually talking about is in the future, and he says that the enemy will be overcome, okay, at some point in the future, then we need a future infinitive passive. And so we're going to say dicit hostes, and now for will be overcome, you need the future infinitive passive, and we're going to go superatum iri. Okay, so we get dicit hostes superatum iri. Now I always find that one a little bit spooky because you're so sort of geared up to making words agree with one another, but superatum is a supine. You cannot change it. Okay, do not try and kind of do anything to the end of superatum. Just leave it alone. Dicit hostes superatum iri. He says that the enemy will be overcome. And finally, the perfect infinitive passive. These are very common. So this is where he says that the enemy have been overcome. Okay? Perfect infinitive passive. So we go dicit hostes superatos esse. Now notice with that one we did have to change the end. Superatus has got a bonus type adjective ending, and that one does change to agree with what is effectively the subject of the indirect statement, which, as you now know, goes in the accusative. You know, blimey, it's all peculiar stuff, I know. This concept that the subject of a statement could go in the accusative is deeply sort of weird after everything we've taught you about the subject goes in the nominative, the object goes in the accusative, all of that stuff. But indirect statement, this is the way it works. It's called the accusative and infinitive, and you just follow these rules and everything will be fine. Okay, now in the book there's lots of practice at just forming these infinitives. You know, so you're asked to translate a word like vulnerari, and to spot that that is a present infinitive passive, to be wounded, or defendi. Now, defendo, defendere is the Latin for I defend. Okay, defendi is that squished present infinitive passive form. So defendi means to be defended. Now, I've got a confession to make. It could also mean I have defended. I'm sorry about that. Principal parts of defendo are defendo, defendere, defendi, defensum. Okay, we get defense from that last one, defensum. But as you can see, the third principal part, defendi, means I have defended, but the present infinitive passive is also defendi. And so it's only the context that would give you any chance of getting it right. You know, that will happen occasionally, not often, but it does happen occasionally. I mean, just thinking about capio, for example, capio capere capi captum. So capi means I have captured, and capi means to be captured. So there they are different. But just occasionally you will find that a verb has got principal parts, which means that some of the forms are identical, and you just have to kind of go with it and work it out from the context. That, of course, happens a lot with nouns anyway. So, you know, don't be too surprised. We know that mensai could be genitive singular, dative singular, nominative plural, or vocative plural. So, you know, we are used to having to cope with endings being the same. Okay, and I'll just do one more of these little things. So we've got instructus esse. Okay, instructus esse. Well, you can tell, I hope, that that is a perfect infinitive passive. It's got esse on the end of a PPP, instructus, and you end up with it meaning to have been drawn up, because instruo means to draw up. Okay, so a bit more practice going the other way, which is always good, you know, forming little infinitives. So you'd be asked to put into Latin to be called, to be advised, to be about to carry, to have told, to be about to overwhelm, to have been conquered, all of that sort of stuff. Do those because it's good to really force yourself to go through the motions of, you know, proving that you've got a new point on board. But don't want to overload you now in this video, so I'm just going to do a couple of sentences both ways. So first couple, first one we're going to go for is dicit orbem oppugnatam esse. Okay, dicit orbem oppugnatam esse. Right, dicit, he says. Now we're going into an accusative and infinitive. Orbem, that the city. He says that the city. Now what about the city? Oppugnatam esse. Now oppugnatam, that ending has changed. Okay, it's agreeing with the orbem, which is a feminine accusative singular noun. So he says that the city, oppugnatam esse, has been attacked. Okay, so that was a perfect infinitive passive, and the us of oppugnatus esse was changed to agree with orbem, accusative feminine singular. Okay, do another one. Nuntiat milites ab hostibus inter affectos esse. Okay, nuntiat, he announces, milites, that the soldiers. Okay, get used to this idea that he says, or he believes, or he knows, or he hears, or he perceives that. Okay, that's how these accusatives and infinitives, accusative and infinitives work. Okay, so he announces that the soldiers, right, ab hostibus inter affectos esse, have been killed by the enemy. Okay, so inter affectos esse is a perfect infinitive passive. It's got os on the end of it because it's agreeing with milites, the soldiers, accusative, masculine, plural. Okay, and one more of these. Sciunt imperatorem a consule monitum esse. Okay, they know that the general, imperatorem, they know that the general, a consule monitum esse, has been warned by the consul. And actually, I will do another one because we've got a future one coming up. So we go, dicunt Romam a gallis mox oppugnatum iri. Okay? Dicunt, they say, Romam, that Rome, they say that Rome, a gallis, by the Gauls, mox, soon, and then we've got this weird thing, oppugnatum iri. Okay? Future infinitive passive. Will be attacked. Okay, so they say that Rome will soon be attacked by the Gauls. And notice that oppugnatum iri, oppugnatum didn't have to change in any way at all. It didn't need to go feminine or plural or singular or anything. It just is oppugnatum, which is the supine of the verb with iri stuck on the end of it to form this so-called future infinitive passive. Okay? Okay, now you knew this was coming. We're going to go the other way for a couple into Latin. Number one, he says that the town is being built. Okay? He says, dicit, that the town, oppidum. Now that's a neuter noun, that is its accusative, neuter, singular. Dicit oppidum. Is being built, we need the present infinitive passive of to build, aedificari. So dicit oppidum aedificari. Okay, number two. They say that the work has already been completed. Okay, they say dicunt, that the work, now the Latin for work is opus. If you remember opus, it's a neuter third declension noun. Opus, 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 operis, operi, opera. Okay, so dicunt opus, remember that word is neuter, has already been completed. So we'll get already in, yam, and now we want has been completed. Okay, the Latin for I complete is conficio, conficio, conficere, confeci, confectum. So to form the perfect infinitive passive of confectum, we change it to confectus esse. Okay? Then you have to remember that we are making that agree with a neuter accusative noun, opus. So we get confectum esse. Right? Dicunt opus iam confectum esse. Okay? So there's a lot going on there. You're forming the perfect infinitive passive of conficio. You're making it agree with a noun that is in the accusative, but just to kind of unsettle us, the word in the accusative is opus, which kind of doesn't look very accusative, but it is because it's neuter. Opus, opus, opus. Okay? So it kind of looks peculiar to me. Opus confectum esse, but there we go. That is correct. And then we'll do one more, this one using our weird future infinitive-ish passive. We know that the ships will be built as quickly as possible. We know, schemus, that the ships, okay, accusative, they need to be in the accusative, they are feminine and they're plural. So, naves, okay, will be built. I'll do that now. It's going to be the future infinitive passive of to build. So, aedificatum iri. Okay. And then we've got this phrase, as quickly as possible. I don't know if I've told you this, but it's quam celerime. I think I did tell you that when we were doing superlative adverbs, actually. So, quam celerime is the Latin for as quickly as possible. It's quam, the adverb quam, followed by the superlative adverb for quickly. Celerime. Okay, so that whole thing would be scimus naves quam calerime aedificatum iri. Okay, right, now I think, yeah, big pat on the back, because indirect statement in Latin is an absolutely essential construction. It's used again and again and again. It removes the need for inverted commas. If you think about it, if you hadn't learned how to do indirect statement, we would always have to be saying things like, he says, open inverted commas, the town is being attacked, close inverted commas. Whereas now we can say, he says that the town is being attacked, which is much more natural and much more likely to be the way it would be reported. Okay, hope that all makes sense. Next time, we're going to continue looking at these little fellows, indirect statements, but I'm going to teach you about a concept called primary and historic. Okay, so look forward to that. See you back here on this channel very, very soon, and keep up the good work.